The morning sun stretched its golden arms across the skyline, painting the city with a glow that promised life, motion, and endless noise. Street vendors called out their wares, car horns tangled in a constant chorus, and hurried footsteps rushed past every corner as though time itself was always running short. In the middle of this bustling world, inside a long black limousine with tinted glass, sat a girl who carried an entirely different world within her, one of silence. Her name was Arya Harrington. At first glance, she appeared like any other child of privilege, golden hair that shimmered in the sun, dresses tailored from the finest fabrics, eyes that glowed with innocence. But Arya's world was cloaked in quiet. Since the day she was born, not a single word had escaped her lips. Doctors labeled her condition as selective mutism, others whispered about neurological barriers, but none of the expensive specialists, endless therapies, or machines brought to the Harrington mansion had changed her fate. To the outside world, her father, Victor Harrington, was untouchable. A man who had risen from nothing, who had carved empires out of sweat and ruthless determination. People admired him, feared him, even envied him. But behind closed doors, in the quiet rooms of his mansion, Victor was simply a father, broken by the silence of his only child. All the money in the world could not buy her laughter. All the diamonds in his vault could not purchase her voice. He often watched her at night, standing by her doorway as she sat on her bed, sketching silently in her notebook. Arya's drawing spoke for her, sunsets filled with radiant oranges and deep purples, pictures of women with wings, and children holding hands under skies bursting with stars. Her eyes shone with words she could not speak, and each time Victor caught the glimmer in them, he felt his chest tighten with helplessness. The man who could bend markets with his will was powerless before a little girl's silence. Her mother, Elise, had passed away when Arya was only 3 years old. She had been the heartbeat of their home, the warmth that Victor could never replicate no matter how hard he tried. Her death left behind an emptiness that swallowed father and daughter alike. For Arya, silence became both her shield and her prison. For Victor, it became a reminder of everything he could not fix. Family gatherings turned into a stage for whispers. Relatives watched Arya with a pity they barely hid. "Poor child," they would say under their breath. So much wealth, yet so little joy. At playgrounds, Victor's heart would twist when he saw his daughter sit apart from other children, pointing at her throat and shaking her head when they asked her to sing or play. She wanted to belong. She wanted to laugh with them. But silence wrapped itself around her like chains forged by fate itself. It was on an ordinary afternoon, one that Victor thought would pass like any other, that destiny began weaving something extraordinary. His limousine rolled into the city square, where he was expected to finalize yet another deal, numbers, contracts, and signatures that would further expand his empire. But for Arya, sitting quietly in the back seat, that day would change everything. Her small hand pressed against the cold glass of the tinted window as her eyes caught sight of movement in the crowded plaza. Amidst the blur of businessmen, shoppers, and vendors, a girl no older than 12 darted across the square. She was barefoot, her face streaked with dirt, her clothes torn and ragged. Yet, despite her frailty, she carried something with the fierceness of a warrior, an old glass bottle filled with a golden liquid. She clutched it as though it were a crown jewel, her eyes burning with determination. Arya could not look away. Something about this girl felt magnetic, as if the invisible strings of fate had tugged her heart closer. The stranger's name was Mara, though Arya did not yet know it. Mara was everything Arya was not: poor, hungry, invisible to society. But in that fleeting glance, Arya felt more seen than she had ever felt in her entire life. That evening, when Victor stepped out of the car to enter a towering glass building, Arya tugged at the driver's sleeve. She pointed outside, her luminous eyes pleading. For once, Victor allowed her a moment of freedom. Perhaps he thought a short walk in the square would do no harm. Perhaps, deep down, he sensed something larger at play. Arya stepped out, her polished shoes clicking softly against the stone pavement. She wandered toward the fountain at the center of the square, where the sound of rushing water drowned the noise of the crowd. There, kneeling by the fountain, was Mara. She uncorked her strange glass bottle, poured a few shimmering drops into her cupped hand, and drank them as though they were life itself. When she noticed Arya, Mara's eyes widened. She saw the fine dress, the polished hair, the unmistakable mark of wealth. For a second she thought of running. Girls like Arya belonged to worlds that had never once glanced at her. But Arya stepped closer, shy yet curious. Her eyes fixed on the bottle. Without words she pointed to it. Mara hesitated, then whispered, her voice soft but certain, "This is no ordinary drink. My grandmother told me it carries hope. It gives voice to what is trapped inside." Arya did not understand the words, but her heart recognized the weight they carried. Her silence met Mara's belief, and between them, something unspoken blossomed. Mara tilted the bottle gently, offering it with hands that trembled slightly, not from fear, but from the gravity of what she was about to share. The liquid shimmered in the fading sunlight, glowing like honey melted from the heavens. Arya held the bottle with both hands, hesitant, her pulse quickening. Deep within her, something stirred, an instinct beyond reason, a whisper older than words. "Trust her," it said. "Trust this girl." And so, Arya lifted the bottle to her lips. The first taste was sweet, strange, and unlike anything she had ever known. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. The plaza remained loud, the fountain still spilled water, the world went on as if untouched. But then a burning sensation spread through her throat. Arya gasped, clutching her neck, her chest tightening as though something long imprisoned clawed its way upward. Mara's eyes widened with fear. Had she made a mistake? And then it happened. A sound. Weak, trembling, but real. From Arya's lips escaped a single word, one that no doctor, no therapy, no prayer had ever been able to release. "Papa." Victor Harrington had just stepped out of the towering glass building across the square, his mind still tangled in figures, contracts, and the endless chase of empire building. His polished shoes echoed against the stone pavement, and for him, it was supposed to be just another deal, just another day in the relentless march of business. But then he heard it. A sound so fragile, so unexpected, it pierced through the clamor of the plaza like sunlight breaking through storm clouds. "Papa." The briefcase in his hand slipped from his fingers, crashing onto the ground. For a moment, Victor stood frozen, his heart pounding violently inside his chest. He looked up and saw her, Arya, his silent little girl, clutching her throat, her lips trembling, her voice breaking through years of silence. "Papa," she said again, stronger this time, her voice trembling but undeniably real. Victor's eyes flooded with tears faster than he could blink them away. His powerful legs, usually steady with the confidence of a self-made millionaire, buckled beneath the weight of that single word. He rushed across the square, pushing through the crowd, his vision blurred with salt water. When he reached Arya, she stumbled into his arms. He lifted her up as though she were weightless, his body shaking as he clutched her to his chest. For years he had dreamed of hearing her voice, even if only in whispers. He had prayed, begged, spent fortunes in search of this miracle. And now here it was, unfolding not in the office of a specialist, not inside a sterile hospital room, but in the open air of a crowded city square. "My little girl," Victor sobbed, holding her close. "Say it again. Please say it again." Arya buried her face into his suit jacket and whispered once more, "Papa." The world around them seemed to stop. Bystanders gasped. Strangers who had no connection to their lives found themselves wiping tears from their eyes. A silence swept over the crowd, not from absence of noise but from reverence. Everyone present knew they were witnessing something extraordinary, something far beyond science or money. And then Victor saw her. Standing a few steps away was Mara, the ragged girl with dirt-streaked cheeks and torn clothes, clutching the nearly empty glass bottle. Her wide, dark eyes shimmered with both fear and wonder. She had given Arya the impossible gift, the key to unlock her silence. Victor's knees gave way. In front of the girl who had nothing, the man who owned skyscrapers and fleets of cars knelt down. For the first time in his life he bowed not to power or to wealth but to kindness. His voice broke as he asked, "Who are you?" Mara's lips curved into a faint smile. She whispered softly, someone who believed her voice was never gone. It was only waiting. Victor tried to comprehend the weight of her words. His instinct as a businessman surged, he wanted to repay her, to throw money at this miracle, to reward her with all the luxuries his empire could provide. He pulled out a thick wallet, offering stacks of cash, his trembling hands desperate to do something, anything to repay this unimaginable act. "Take it," he insisted, his voice pleading. "Take whatever you want. Cars, a home, education, say the word and it's yours." But Mara shook her head. She stepped back, clutching the bottle tighter. "I didn't do it for money," she said firmly, her voice carrying strength far greater than her frail frame. "I did it because no child should live without hope." Those words struck Victor harder than any business loss ever had. He had been fighting Arya's silence with wealth, building fortresses of machines, therapies, and contracts around her. Yet here was a girl who had nothing, and with nothing but faith and compassion, she had done what the world's best doctors could not. Victor's chest tightened. His mind raced back through years of frustration, nights of silent tears, endless boardrooms where he buried himself in work to escape the helplessness at home. And now he realized the truth: what Arya had needed all along was not the weight of his fortune, but the lightness of belief. Arya, still nestled in his arms, lifted her head. For the first time in her life she looked directly into his eyes, and with a trembling smile she said again, "Papa." Victor sobbed openly, unashamed. He kissed her forehead, his tears dampening her golden hair. "I'm here, my love. I'm here." The crowd slowly dispersed, whispers rippling like wind through leaves. But Victor's focus never left the two girls before him, his daughter and the stranger who had changed everything. Mara turned as if to leave. She had given her gift, and in her world of hunger and shadows she expected nothing more. But Arya, with her new fragile voice, called out. It was not a full sentence, not even a perfect word. Just a sound. "Wait." Mara froze. Her eyes widened, her lips parting in disbelief. Arya had spoken not just to her father but to her. Victor, still overwhelmed, watched as Arya extended her hand toward Mara. The silent girl who had always drawn pictures of togetherness, who had always pointed longingly at groups of children, was now reaching out, not with sketches or gestures, but with her own voice. Mara hesitated, fear and longing warring inside her. No one had ever reached for her like that before. But slowly, almost shyly, she placed her small dirt-stained hand in Arya's clean, delicate one. Victor's heart swelled at the sight. He looked at Mara with new eyes, not as a poor child to be pitied, but as someone extraordinary, someone who had given him the greatest treasure of his life. "I cannot let you disappear into the streets again," Victor said firmly. "You've given me back my daughter. You've given me back my life. Please let me help you." But Mara shook her head once more. Her spirit, though tired, remained unbending. "I don't need your riches," she said quietly. "Just promise me one thing, never let her forget that her voice was always hers. It wasn't the drink, it wasn't me. It was her. She just needed to believe." Victor swallowed hard. He nodded, tears streaming freely. "I promise," he whispered. The square grew darker as the evening sun dipped behind buildings. Streetlights flickered to life, casting long shadows across the fountain. Victor stood with Arya in his arms and Mara by his side. And for the first time in years he felt the kind of wealth no ledger could measure. Little did he know that this was only the beginning. Arya's fragile voice would grow stronger. Their bond with Mara would deepen. And the lessons born of this miraculous day would change not just their lives, but the lives of everyone who crossed their path. For now, though the night carried them home, Arya's laughter echoing faintly in the air like the soft ringing of a bell long thought lost, and Mara's quiet footsteps trailing behind, carrying hope in every step. The limousine rolled through the city streets that evening, carrying not just Victor Harrington and his daughter, but also a miracle that still pulsed in the air like a secret too powerful to vanish. Inside the car, silence returned, but it was no longer the heavy silence that had once suffocated them. It was a silence filled with anticipation, broken now and again by Arya's timid attempts at words. She sat beside her father, clutching his hand with both of hers. Her lips trembled, her voice fragile but determined. "Pa," she whispered, repeating the word as though trying to memorize its shape. Victor's throat tightened every time he heard it. He stroked her hair gently, whispering, "Yes, my love. I'm here. Always." The driver, usually expressionless, caught sight of them in the rearview mirror and quickly turned his head away, his own eyes glassy. Even he knew this was no ordinary day. Back at the mansion, the staff gathered quietly, whispering among themselves. They had long grown used to Arya's silence, treating her with cautious kindness, never pressing her to speak. But that night, as Arya walked through the marble foyer, she turned her head toward one of the maids, her lips parting. "Hello." The word was soft, almost broken, but unmistakable. Gasps echoed through the hall. The maid dropped the tray she was holding, tears springing to her eyes. In that single word, Arya transformed the mansion from a place of echoes into a place of living sound. Over the next days, Arya's voice grew like a flower slowly learning to bloom. Her words came hesitantly at first, short, careful syllables, often repeated. But Victor was there for every one of them, listening with the devotion of a man who had once believed he would never hear such a gift. He canceled meetings, postponed business trips, and began spending mornings in the garden with her, encouraging her to name the things she saw. "Tree," she whispered once, pointing at the branches swaying above them. "Sky. Bird." Each word was a treasure, each one a small miracle. But as Arya's voice blossomed, Victor's thoughts returned again and again to Mara, the ragged girl who had started it all. The day after the miracle, He had sent men to search the city, handing out descriptions of her. A girl about 12, thin, dirty clothes carrying a glass bottle, he explained. But the city was vast, and children like Mara were countless, scattered across alleys, markets, and forgotten corners. Weeks passed with no sign of her. Victor could not rest. He remembered the way she had shaken her head when he offered her money, the conviction in her voice when she said, "I did it because no child should live without hope." Those words haunted him. He had built skyscrapers, yet he had never built something as pure as that girl's faith. One night, after tucking Arya into bed, Victor sat alone in his study. The fire crackled in the hearth, throwing shadows across shelves of leather-bound books and gleaming trophies of his success. But for the first time he saw them not as symbols of triumph, but as hollow ornaments. He realized that for years he had been measuring his life in numbers, profits, investments, assets, while the true wealth of life had been slipping through his fingers. Arya, asleep upstairs, had shown him that wealth was not power but presence. And Mara had shown him that hope could thrive even in the darkest corners of the world. It was this realization that drove him to continue searching for her. He instructed his staff not just to search in the markets or plazas but to look beneath the archways, the abandoned railway stations, the hidden places where the invisible children of the city huddled for warmth. And then, one cold evening as winter crept upon the city, they found her. She was curled beneath an old stone archway near the edge of town, her thin arms wrapped around herself, the empty glass bottle lying at her side. Her face was pale, her body shivering under the threadbare cloth that barely shielded her from the biting wind. Victor himself went to her. He knelt on the damp stone floor, his expensive coat brushing against the dirt. When she stirred, her eyes widened in shock. "You?" she whispered. "Yes," Victor said softly, his voice breaking. "I found you." Mara tried to sit up, clutching the bottle protectively as if afraid he might take it from her. But Victor reached out gently, covering her hand with his. "I don't want the bottle. I want you." Her lips parted in disbelief. "Why?" "Because you gave me back my daughter," he said. His voice cracked, his eyes filling once more. "And I cannot walk away knowing that the one who saved her has no one to save her in return." Mara shook her head, her spirit still resisting. "I told you I don't need money." Victor nodded. "And I'm not offering you money. I'm offering you something else. A home. Safety. Family." At that moment Arya appeared. She had begged her father to come along when he went searching, and Victor had finally agreed. She stepped out of the car, her breath visible in the icy air, her golden hair glowing beneath the streetlight. Mara's eyes widened when she saw her. Arya walked forward slowly, her small shoes crunching against the frost. She stopped in front of Mara and for the first time, used her new voice with no hesitation. "Sister." The word, soft and trembling, carried more weight than gold. Mara's eyes filled with tears, her thin body shaking as Arya reached out her hand. For a moment Mara was frozen. She had lived her entire life believing she belonged nowhere. Yet here was this child, the one she had given hope to, calling her sister. It was an invitation into a world she had never imagined could be hers. Slowly, with trembling fingers, she placed her hand in Arya's. Victor watched, his heart swelling. He knew at that instant that his mansion, once filled with silence and shadows, would never be the same again. The laughter of two girls would fill its halls. The warmth of kindness would reach corners that wealth had never touched. That night, Mara entered the Harrington mansion for the first time. The marble floors, the glittering chandeliers, the towering staircases, all of it was foreign to her. She hesitated at every step, her eyes darting around as though expecting to be told she didn't belong. But Arya held her hand tightly, whispering again, "Sister." The staff, uncertain at first, soon understood. They bowed their heads with respect, recognizing that this was no guest. This was family. Victor stood at the foot of the staircase, watching as his daughter and her new sister disappeared down the hall, their small voices mingling, one fragile and new, the other soft and uncertain. For the first time in years his mansion felt alive. And deep within his chest, Victor knew this was not just Arya's miracle. It was his redemption. The days that followed changed everything inside the Harrington mansion. Where once there had been silence echoing through long corridors, now there was laughter, fragile at first, like the flutter of bird wings, but growing stronger with each passing day. Arya's voice, once thought forever lost, now spilled into every corner, carrying joy with it. She practiced words eagerly, sometimes stumbling, sometimes stopping mid-sentence, but always trying. And always Mara was beside her. She helped Arya with patience far beyond her years, clapping softly at every new word, holding her hand when she hesitated, whispering encouragement when fear returned. Victor watched them, his heart both heavy and full. Heavy because he realized how blind he had been all these years, trying to purchase miracles instead of nurturing them. Full because now for the first time his home felt whole. The bond between Arya and Mara deepened quickly. Arya no longer drew pictures of winged women or children holding hands, she lived them. She and Mara ran through the gardens, whispered secrets in candlelit rooms, and sang softly together at night. Mara's kindness lit spaces of the mansion that had never known warmth, and Arya's laughter filled Victor's soul with peace he had thought he would never know. One evening, as the three of them sat in the library by the crackling fire, Arya nestled between them, her golden hair glowing in the firelight. She looked up at her father, her small voice steady. "Papa happy?" Victor's throat closed as tears burned his eyes. He nodded, pulling her close. "Yes, my love. Happy." He turned to Mara, who sat quietly, her eyes lowered. She still struggled to believe she belonged here, still expected that one day someone would tell her to leave. But Victor reached across and placed his hand gently over hers. "You gave me back my daughter," he said softly. "But you also gave me back myself. I see now that wealth means nothing without kindness, and empires mean nothing without family. From this day on you are not a guest here. You are my daughter too." Mara's lips trembled, her eyes filling with tears. She tried to speak, but Arya beat her to it. Turning to her with a smile, she whispered again, "Sister." The word rang through the library like a sacred vow, sealing a bond that no power on earth could break. In that moment, Victor realized that true riches were not locked in vaults or measured in skyscrapers. True riches were in the voices of children, in the power of compassion, in the miracles born of faith. And so, what began as an ordinary day in a noisy city square became a story remembered forever, a story of a mute child, a ragged girl, and the miracle that bound them together. A story that proved that hope, once shared, can change not just one life, but every life it touches.